Hey geeks and gamers, I'm back to do another coverage of the supplement races for the Tales of Runeterra. In this episode we'll be going over the Troll and the Ursine. Felt like it was good to group them together. They kind of have a very similar aesthetic as far as which players would be drawn toward them. They're definitely pretty overwhelming forces and play very well into different types of fighters, barbarians. I've honestly seen a couple of people play rogues and play it more like a front line where you're just kind of giving yourself advantage through allies. But either way, we can get on into it. We'll start with the Troll. So there aren't any sub-races for the Troll, but it's a pretty hefty, decent class, pretty hefty, decent race just on its own. Either way, it obviously is getting a bonus to strength with their natural size being pretty hefty and muscular. They're also getting constitution, being raised in a tundra. Most of them are lawful, considering the fact that they're a very tribal race and usually are giving full abode to their king, or specifically their clan. They are large-sized creatures and are often quite tall and muscular. There can be exceptions to this, but on average, considering that they're a war-driven race that's very primal and territorial, it's usually better to have them on the stronger side. They have a 30-foot movement speed and speak Common and Troll. They also get Dark Vision for 60 feet. And they're seeing the return of the Ice Blood ability, which gives you resistance to cold damage and immunity to natural cold. They're also getting a natural attack called Chomp that deals 1d4 piercing damage to an enemy within 5 feet of you. This also has a bonus effect where your next melee attack after this gets 2 times your strength modifier to its damage instead of just the modifier. This attack is a standard action and is treated as an unarmed natural attack, so it could proc on things like a monk's abilities. It would get the bonus damage from that, or even stunning fist people. The next thing we have is Ice Pillar, which allows you to summon a 5 by 5 foot pillar of ice that creates frozen difficult terrain in a 10-foot radius around it. This lasts for a number of rounds equal to your constitution modifier, giving you a bit of kind of soft CC, and you could even, by all definitions, technically spawn the ice pillar underneath someone, which would knock them up into the air. This can be a number of times per day equal to your constitution modifier. Their final ability is Tribute, which is when an enemy dies within 10 feet of you, you regenerate 1d4 HP from their passing. I've gone back and forth on how many times I really want to let this happen. At the moment, I'm really saying leave it up to the DM because it's something that's really hyper-specific. I've been treating it as constitution modifier times per day, but I didn't really want to cement that in just yet as the rule going forward because it's still under a bit of testing, and it's something where it's a pretty small amount of HP as far as it doesn't scale well, but for the early game it can be really good for clearing dungeons. With that said, we can move on to the next one, which is the Ursine, the large sentient bear race, who recently got a rework in game, so that gave me a little bit more of a inspiration for this. Obviously they're much tankier, they get some constitution, but they're still on the muscular side, so they are getting strength and kind of the flip of the Troll. They are usually neutral, only really fighting to protect themselves and their land. They're usually very pacifistic and won't really go looking for a fight, but are very capable of doing it when they have to. They are large-sized creatures, being extremely tall, built like a bear walking upright. With that in mind, their base speed is only 25. As them walking upright, they're not particularly fast. Their base languages are Common and Ursine, and they also get 60 feet of dark vision. The next ability is going to compensate for the fact that they obviously have a little bit of a slower base speed, because when a bear gets down on all fours, it's quite a bit faster, allowing it to dash as a basically twice as much when they use the standard action to dash. So instead of, if you were to dash and be moving 50 feet, you'd be dashing and moving 75. They also are seeing the return of Ice Blood, which makes them resistant to cold damage and immune to natural cold. and they're getting a couple of kind of shaman-esque abilities with their more magical background and the heavy lore that kind of revolves around that. They're getting Sky Splitter, which allows them to deal 1d6 lightning damage in a 10-foot radius around you, and you heal for half the damage done. You can cast this a number of times per day equal to your wisdom modifier, giving you a little bit of sustain while giving a little bit of damage, kind of like the ability he has, which technically gives him a shield, but it felt more useful for it to be a heal, considering the fact that temporary health doesn't really stack very well. Moving forward, we also have Stormbringer, which once per day you may enter a rage, and while you're in this rage, your melee attacks get your wisdom modifier as lightning damage on successful hits. Additionally, while in this state, you gain resistance to piercing and lightning damage for the duration, and this is a bonus action to go into. This gives them a little bit of versatility as far as you could play warlocks and be a melee character, you could play a druid and be an on-hit, upfront, powerful caster, you could play a fighter, ranger. You could stack this with barbarian. It has its ups and downs to that, because obviously they do get quite a bit of damage off. You're not really getting the double resistance from piercing, but it's still a viable option for those that want to do it. Either way, ring the bell, subscribe, leave a comment below what you want to see, what you want added. I've already started working on different DLC concepts of what I would want to add as like the next expansion to this with different races, different backgrounds. I'm always happy to keep going, and either way, I'll see you in the next adventure.